Good morning, Montrose. I'm Tonya Maddox, and I am the publisher of the Montrose Daily Press. And in the MDP studios, we have the lovely Dr. Dori Adragna. So Dr. Dori, she said I can call her that.
Yeah, of course.
Dr. Dori looking lovely in pink, one of my favorite colors, and I promise you we did not coordinate this. But she is with Peak Professionals, and we're going to chat a little bit about her area of practice, about growing up in Olathe, and just her passion for children in general. But before we get there, Elevate Fiber, thank you so much. We could not do this without you. So Elevate Fiber, we appreciate your participation in underwriting Montrose Matters. Now to Dr. Dori. Sydney, can we find a theme song of, Finding Dori? I'm sure we can, right?
Yeah, it's out there.
So, Dr. Dori, how many times do you hear that now that you're back in?
Oh my goodness. Oh, probably like at least 10 times a day. There was a little bit of a lag between Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, so there's a period of time where people kind of forgot about it. And then Finding Dory came out and it all started again.
And you happen to go into a practice that specializes in children. What were you thinking?
Right.
With a name like Dori?
It's perfect though, because it's easy for kids to remember.
Do they look at you and say, oh?
Sometimes. They're like, wait a second.
So tell me this. There is we had the pleasure of having your husband on the show, and he's quite a ham, by the way.
He had a great time. He loved it.
So he told us this story about, I don't know, this cute girl, that went to Olathe High School, that he eventually asked out and so forth.
So that was the story he told you, okay.
It is. What's the real story? Supposedly he went to Montrose High, you went to Olathe, and it was love at first sight.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll do this shortened version of the story. Okay. So I went to Olathe, and as you know, there's more stuff to do now in the town, but there wasn't a lot at that time. And so my friends and I decided, let's walk through the Taco Bell drive-thru. Why not, right? Because what else is there to do?
I did not hear that part. Do you remember that one, Sydney?
So we try to go and set off the little sensor because, as you drive up, you have to have, so we're all like, 1, 2, 3, jump, 1, 2, 3, jump. And I was trying to make it go off. Wasn't working. So this guy sticks his head out and he's like, come down here. So we go down there, we order our food, and anyway, I was the only one that he didn't make pay for my food. He bought it for me, and I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. Like, all right, so I got a free chalupa, and that was awesome.
Listen up, management at Taco Bell on Townsend.
So anyway, so then we would come back every Friday night. He was working, as you know.
Did you drive or walk back?
I walked actually for several times, and finally we would go in. But I did the walking thing for a while. It was fun. And now there's a sign there that says, do not walk through the drive. I'm pretty sure that was
Due to the
mine.
Graduating class of.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah. So anyway, so then I finally decided, we'll go in and start chatting. But, Joe, he's very, he works all the time. He's very type A personality. And I don't know.
She just called you out, Dr. Adragna.
I know, it's true. Anyway, it took a little while. There's a little bit more to the story, but he wanted to date me for a while, and I was just kind of like, nah, it's all right. Let's just leave it at the free food for a little bit.
Dori.
But, and his mom, okay, so this is the funny part. His mom worked at the school district for quite a while, and so she is similar to him, and she's like, once she's into something, she is into it too. So she researched me and talked to my teachers. And it was getting to this point where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm being stalked. This is crazy. But anyway, long story short, we just decided he was really nice. And my friend's like, Dori, you should just give him a shot. He's a nice guy. And so I'm like, all right. And then that was it. That was history. Everything else is history.
And then you guys went off to undergrad.
Yeah, we made this deal. I wanted to go to Mesa State College. That was what it was called at the time, Colorado Mesa University. And he wanted to go to Colorado, University of Colorado, because he's like, there are more people that get accepted into med school from there than from Mesa State. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, med school? Okay, well, I'm going to go to Mesa State, so maybe we could have a long distance thing. I don't know. And he's like, well, I'll make you a deal. I'll go with you to Mesa if you go with me to med school. And I'm thinking, that's 4 years from now. Who knows if he'll get accepted? Sure, why not?
You took the gamble,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I took a gamble. So But then, yeah, we went to undergrad together. We really were dedicated to getting our studies done, and then it all just worked out so nicely, because then I wanted to then apply to grad school, and he wanted to apply to med school. So I applied to grad schools all around where he applied to med schools. We luckily got accepted both at our top schools in Denver.
Right.
And then it came the whole, residency part, and then I wanted to go on and get my doctorate.
Yes.
And so it was another like fork in the road, but then we both got accepted again into our areas, still in the same place. So yeah, it all just like meant to be, I think.
I have to say that with all kidding aside, Montrose, Olathe, look, this is what we grow here when we just dedicate ourselves to our students and so forth. It's an amazing story. I mean, the whole Taco Bell saying, I have to tell you, Dr. Tori, that's hilarious.
Yep.
But the point is that we had two young people who were dedicated not only to each other, but dedicated to their studies and had a plan. The most amazing thing about that is you came back.
Yeah.
This is where you guys have a young one, a little one.
Yeah. Yep. Amelia, she's 3. She
Okay.
just turned 3 in July. We had the same birthday, actually.
Okay. Sorry, Dr. Joe. You got 2 ladies you have to cater to.
But
in
it's easy for him
July.
to remember now. It's like he doesn't have to remember hardly any dates. So.
Wow. So you came back and you wanted to practice here. So
Yep.
you have your PhD. You
Yeah.
are, tell us about what you do when you're practicing.
Sure, yeah. So I actually was introduced to the psychology field in high school at Olathe. I was trying to get into, I think it was gym class was full or something like that. And so, yeah, it was so funny. I don't exactly remember what class was full, but they put me into the psychology class. And I remember talking to my counselor. I was like, what is psychology? Why? And she's like, oh, no, it's a science class. And I'm like, she's like, but it's about people, like about the minds, and you'll like it. And I'm like, okay. And I actually really, really liked it. So I was like, what should I do? What can I do with the psychology degree if I go on to do this? And so she actually introduced me to the psychology, like school psychology. And then my mother-in-law, she worked at, the school district. And
Right.
so she was able to hook me up with a school psychologist, which she was just my boyfriend's mom at the time. And so anyway, she hooked me up with a school psychologist in the school district here. And I got to shadow him and kind of see what it was like. But he was actually not the best one to shadow, because he was like, don't do this, you don't want to do it. But I loved what he did. And I wanted to help kids. And I knew that, I loved school. Obviously, I went to school forever, and I continue to keep, growing the education piece. And so I thought this was a great way to mesh the education piece and psychology and helping kids and empowering people. And so anyway, so that kind of started my track onto psychology. Went to undergrad, got my undergrad in psychology, and then just looked for graduate schools with school psychology. And luckily, it all just continued to grow my passion and desire to help these kids. And
well, let's take a quick break here, because we want to get back to gym class was full. We'll be right back.
Here in the heart of beautiful western Colorado, known for its unrivaled outdoor recreation, bountiful harvests, and unparalleled quality of life, changes are being made. Elevate Fiber is transforming the way we work, live, and play by creating exciting new opportunities for local families and businesses. Are you ready?
Good morning, Montrose. I'm Tonya Maddox with the Montrose Daily Press. And in the MDP studios, we have Dr. Dori. I got so carried away that we forgot to take a commercial break. So, Dr. Dori was telling us the story of gym class being full at Olathe High. But guess what? They had a psychology program for her. And so as she spoke about her progression and her education, you ended up falling in love with it, even though you were shadowing someone who didn't necessarily love the job.
I know. I always think that's so funny, because I just remember he was very, it's a demanding job, right? And you're not usually the favorite person in the school when you have to talk to the psychologist,
Right.
So So I can understand his perspective, and being in the field now for a while, and I mean, you deal with some hard stuff, and you know, you kind of deal with some social work pieces, and you hear some tough stuff. But then the part that I really, really love, but not only just, you know, helping kids gain appropriate coping skills and tools to handle, you know, all the different things that are out there in our world these days with like bullying and all of that, which that's a whole nother story. But but it's the data piece, and I love being able to, you know, I was told by one of my graduate professors that no kid is untestable. And I totally agree with that, because there would be reports I would get, they're called IEPs, which are individualized education plans. And those are supposed to be individualized to a kid, and it's supposed to pull out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and how are we then going to develop some goals to help support that kid so they're successful in the school setting, which then translates into success post-graduation, whatever that may be. Okay. And so, anyway, I just lost my train of thought with that.
Well, you know, I have a 5-year-old, and this is the first I've heard of that.
Yeah.
So is this for every child, or just a child with that has difficulties?
Yeah, it depends on what type of area of difficulty that the child is having. So maybe it would be something like, I'm sure you've heard of like dyslexia.
Yes.
Or there's also ones for kids with some social emotional concerns. And so anyway, so that's what I was going with. Thank you for helping remind me with the data piece. And so there would be some kiddos, I would read some IEPs, and it would be on there like, oh, we couldn't get a score because this kid just wasn't cooperative. Like, we just couldn't do it. And there are times where kids are, you know, it is very difficult to get that information, but you really have to try to build that rapport and then work with that kid to figure out how can you get the data that you need. And really, you got to figure out what data are you trying to get and what's the point of that data.
How are you going to use it?
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, if it's sometimes, you know, you just have to be creative in the way that you get the information, and you just have to be really patient. And I know in the school settings, you don't always have that time. You're stretched so thin. I think that was part of the reason why the guy that I shadowed didn't like it, is because, you know, there's such demand, and it's even higher now. I mean, as you know, just mental health in general is one of those areas that we really need a lot of support and a lot of help, and it's just an increasing demand. So I think everyone's just feeling so stretched thin. But
let me ask you this, Dr. Dori. Sorry to cut you off on that train of thought. What, in your opinion, what role does video games and television and screen time in general play in this? That's such a good question. So there's new research that's coming out about that, and I don't have the specifics on that yet, but I do know that you know, there's the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Association of Psychology, all of those say that it's definitely important to limit that screen time. And if you think about it, I mean, kiddos, you have a 5-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, so you know the attention span is pretty short anyway. Yes.
And so, but just sitting there and just seeing things over and over so close to your face, and being able to just kind of jump around, it's kind of the whole attention piece. It's just not good to continue that. So as far as like, if you're talking about like the violent video games and those things, I mean, I don't know. I personally don't like it. I professionally also think that it's something that we definitely need to limit, and definitely need to make sure that we have the parental controls, and that you are talking and making sure, if, you know, there's times where, yeah, kids are going to be watching screens, they're going to be seeing things, but if you're there with them and kind of talking through them with what they're seeing, and making sure that it's age appropriate, that's very important. There are some great things that come out of TV. Yes. I don't know if you guys have heard of Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, which is like, have you heard of Daniel Tiger?
I have a 5-year-old, and right? We have, don't judge me, Montrose, we have one television in the house. We have no cable whatsoever, right. And we are a PBS family.
Yep.
So.
Yes. See, and PBS is great, and there's so many awesome. Daniel Tiger with the social emotional piece with that, the songs. I mean, there's some really good stuff out there, but again, you don't want it to where they're just getting all their learning from a TV. They're not interacting with other people, because they're losing that social piece. And when you think about how much you learn socially by looking at other people and interacting with other people, and just the nonverbals and all of that piece, that's a super important part of every kid's development, so everybody's development.
So obviously I am not as educated as you are on this entire topic, but I do know that recently the World Health Organization has, I believe they have termed it a disease. With gaming.
Wow,
yes. Gaming that is now considered a disease, and there are certain aspects they have to, reach due to that.
Right.
That frightens me.
I know.
How do we let it get out of control?
Right? I feel like it's just like anything else with any kind of addiction, right? It's kind of like that addiction piece. So instead of alcohol or drugs, it's this gaming piece.
Yes.
And then there's so many other factors that go along with that. There's the cyberbullying piece. There's things where you hear it. Even if you're not participating in that, you can hear other people talk to each other. And so that's, also something that you want to make sure you limit. And that's scary as a parent, knowing that that's out there. And then there's, people that are trying to lure other people and give them their private information. And so that's why it's just super, super important to make sure. Yes, exactly.
So,
and a plan.
And a plan. That's a good point. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I do want to get your take on a interview that the founder of Twitter gave, and he was talking about his children and his some of the things that he does and some of the parental controls. And then I want to talk about what you're seeing in your practice and what should we be concerned about. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back with Dr. Dori. And welcome back to Montrose Matters. I'm Tonya Maddox, the publisher of the Montrose Daily Press, and I have the lovely Dr. Dori Adragna, and Finding Dory is one of my favorite movies. So I totally gonna get off track here,
okay.
But so I asked Dr. Dori, Ellen DeGeneres plays Dory in the movie. I said, can you dance like Ellen? Yeah, she said no, but I don't know. We may, I don't know. Sydney's really good with this camera. We may find you
dancing. If you do it with me, we can try.
We've done that before in Montrose Matters. Never again, I promise you. No, in all seriousness, though, we were talking about just screen time and how that's affecting children and just their how they interact socially after being on screen time so much, just the dangers of identity theft, and we got all over the place. And I'm sorry,
we did. It's okay.
That's me. But what I did? I forgot that your area of expertise. You're very well educated and learned in every area, but your area of expertise is autism and
and pediatric traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a mouthful.
So let's just segue into autism.
Sure.
First of all, what I am assuming that some of the same things that parents do with a non-special needs child, such as put them in front of the TV when they need a break, some of them are doing that with special needs and autistic children. Have you any concerns that some of the screen time that they're seeing may lead to some of the same behaviors?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I feel like that, there's a whole spectrum of autism. And so you have kiddos that are either more severely impacted and might be nonverbal. And then you have ones that are maybe very verbal and very bright, but really the core of autism is a social communication disorder, where you're having that difficulty interacting with others, understanding body language, looking and paying attention to the world around you. And so when you have kiddos, one of the characteristics of autism is called echolalia, or where you repeat something that you've heard or something that you see. So sometimes that could be like if you and I were talking, you would say either the last sentence or the last few words that I say, and just kind of repetitively. And so what I worry about as part of that is that whatever they're watching, they tend to kind of repeat and say, but not really, some of them might not necessarily understand what they're saying. And I mean, that's true with every kid, right? I mean, sometimes there's song lyrics and they're singing things and you're like, do you know what that means?
Yes.
And so that worries me too. And then another characteristic of autism is that restricted interest and the repetitive behavior. So they could get super into one thing, and this is where it gets kind of hard to differentiate between autism and a typical kiddo, because I mean, kids enjoy different things like Paw Patrol. I mean, you have a daughter, and so you know that there's like Disney and Paw Patrol and Trolls and all these different areas that kids like, which is typical, but typically kids kind of like something and then move on to the next thing and then move on to the next thing. But kids with autism kind of tend to get focused, really, really narrow, and stay on one of those. Or they might move around a little bit, but it's for a longer period of time and it's more intense. Like everything has to be Paw Patrol, everything. And I cannot go to sleep unless I have my Paw Patrol blanket. Yes. And I'm going to have a meltdown and a tantrum unless I have my Paw Patrol blanket. So then the family does certain things to kind of accommodate for that child because they know it's better to make sure that we have 3 extra Paw Patrol blankets
yes.
than have a meltdown, right? And so, yeah. So that's part of.
So that makes, now I'm actually a little more concerned. So that makes the importance of monitoring screen time that much more important. And let me give you a scenario.
Sure.
I told you that in our home we only have one TV, and it's my son. So if he knows you called him a girl, he's going to be like that, Dr. Dori.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, but our son Preston, we were sitting and we were watching TV, and this is when we were young. We had cable. The kid was 2. We're flipping through, and we see a sci-fi commercial.
Yeah.
So the show we're watching is good and clean, but there was a commercial for some sci-fi show, and I don't know, a skeleton turned its head. It said, "Satan will kill you."
Something really.
Like so one commercial in just 30 or 60 seconds, even if you put them in front of the TV watching Gilligan's Island, they could catch on to that commercial. And that child could, if they had the repetitive syndrome, like you were saying, they could repeat that over and over and over and over again.
Well, and just not even just with kids with autism, but kids in general with, like a 2-year-old, not understanding exactly what they're seeing is not real.
Yes.
And so, and I know
point.
you can't shield kids from everything. There's
a
life and world out there. Yeah, we can't wrap them in bubble wrap all the time. It doesn't work. But
where were you 6 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. Were you sitting in front of the TV when this happened? No, but so that's, you got to consider that developmental part of the brain too, because they're not understanding that these things aren't real. And so with any kid in general, just being there to explain to them or to change the channel quickly or whatever it is to kind of help with that piece. But kids with autism can then also just pick up with that, but again, they might not necessarily understand what they're saying or what they're doing, but they might then kind of focus on that piece. So, yeah.
Well, Dr. Dori, I can't thank you enough for what you do and what your practice does for Montrose. I just want to ask one last question.
Sure.
There are communities out there, and let's talk about the autistic community
Sure.
and the children and their families. Why don't we see them? Why are they so secluded?
Right? Yeah, I know. I think I don't know. There's a couple things with that. So the CDC just came out with new statistics on the prevalence of autism, the rates of autism, and now it's 1 in 59, and it was 1 in 68. But it's not because that we're seeing autism more and more and more. It's that we're getting better at diagnosing and understanding and identifying autism, especially in communities where they may have been neglected or not looked at before. And so it's not that it's happening more, it's that we're understanding it better. So I do think that we're getting the information out there, we're getting the kids diagnosed, and I feel like on the Western slope, we just have such limited resources in general for kids in special education in general, but then also kids with autism. And so I think that's part of it. I think that it's hard for, sometimes it's hard to receive that diagnosis as a family.
Yes.
And you have anywhere between people being very, very devastated and then also relief, because it's like, oh, now this makes sense. And the nice thing is, once you get that diagnosis and it's truly an autism diagnosis, there are evidence-based interventions that will work with that kiddo to really support. But again, there's a lot of nice resources that I'm still learning about coming back to the area. And really one of my goals and one of my parts of my job is to identify those areas and get the community, into these support groups where then where they don't feel so secluded and they feel like they don't have the supports needed. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I think the education is getting there. We still have work to do, but we're getting there.
Well, listen, Montrose is on your side. We're glad that you all are here. We're glad you're trying to take care of these kiddos, and that we get to sing Disney songs when you're around.
Yes, I love it.
So, Dr. Dori, thank you so much for being on Montrose Matters, and we look forward to seeing all the great things that Peak will do in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
You're welcome. Have a great day, Montrose.